All right, today we're going to learn also a mimer which was said by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, in 1942. Tufshin Beit. That's after he had already escaped from Europe. The last boat, or one of the last boats out from Europe, and made it to the USA. And as you remember, this is the mimer right after the previous one we learned. If you remember, we learned a few days ago. We learned and we finished a mimer by the previous Rebbe also, and it was also about the giving of the Torah, the third month, and it's talked about Abraham. Remember? Spoke about Abraham. And that Abraham really knew the whole Torah before it was given, so why did the Torah have to be given? And said, the Rebbe said in that previous mimer that we learned, we have to understand a little bit about Abraham. That Abraham built two altars. The first one was to the God that appeared to him, and the second one was just to God. Higher than anything that appeared to him. And the first level of God, the Rebbe explained how we can attain that level. By thinking about God. By meditating. Contemplating. Thinking about the greatness of God, the oneness of God, the closeness of God.
Does that have anything to do with what we've been studying the last moment about this?
Right. If you think about these higher angels and lower angels and how far away we are from the whole business, so you get excited about God. That's why we think about these angels in our prayers, the prayers before Rosh Hashanah, before Shema Yisrael. In the prayer right before Shema Yisrael, there's what's called Birkat Kriya Shema. There's the blessings before we say Shema Yisrael. Interestingly enough, the blessings before we say Shema Yisrael have absolutely nothing to do with Shema Yisrael. They don't say, like all other blessings before mitzvahs, Asher Kiddishanu mitzvahs of Itzivanu, right? To put on tefillin, to take lulav and esrog. Here it should say to say Shema Yisrael. But it doesn't. What does it say? It talks about, the first blessing talks about the angels. And the Ophanim and the Chayos HaKodesh and the Seraphim, how they're burning up and they're saying Kadosh. And the second blessing talks about how God took us out of Egypt and He gave us the Torah. It doesn't mention Shema Yisrael. Why are they called the blessings of Shema Yisrael? And why are they put right before Shema Yisrael? Because saying Shema Yisrael is the commandment. It's not like any other commandment. Any other commandment, all you have to know is that God commanded us. That's all. God commanded us to put on tefillin. God commanded us to put on tzitzis. God commanded us to give charity. God commanded us to put a mezuzah on our door. God commanded us to keep Shabbat. God commanded. You don't have to know. You don't have to rouse your heart. You don't have to get emotional. But the blessings of Shema, you have to get emotional. Right? You have to get emotional. Why do you have to get emotional? Because that's the whole idea of loving God. Shema Yisrael, listen Jews, God is one. You love God. So it says in that mimer that there's different levels of loving God. There's what's called the lower altar, where you love God because of things that you can comprehend. And then there's a higher level of loving God, which is loving God because it reveals the essence of the Jewish soul. That's called B'kol Meodecha, self-sacrifice, Mesirut Nefesh. And that is what we got at Mount Sinai. That's how the mimer ends. That's what we got at Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, we got the ability of, every single Jew got the ability to completely surrender himself to the Creator of the universe like Abraham did. And that's the whole essence of Judaism is. The whole essence of Judaism, what's called self-sacrifice, Mesirut Nefesh. All the other religions and philosophies in the world are always only thinking about myself. How can I get the most in this world and the next world, in both? And you do that by being selfless and by sacrificing yourself and etc. Instead of how to win friends and influence people, how to win heaven and influence God. But it's all for me. It's all for me what I get. Judaism says, no, the only purpose that we're here in this world is to do what God wants. And what does God want? That this world should be a perfect place. And you can only do that if you only think and only feel what God wants. Who gets to a level like that? Who has this? Very rare people. Very rare is the people do. Very common that people can get once in a while. Could be. Very common. Or it should be very common. The people can get this feeling once in a while. That feeling is called the Benoni.
I just remember when we were kids, JFK was a big figure. Remember his big speech. Don't ask what you think the country could do for you, ask what you can do for you.
Right.
And then maybe study some Bible.
No, listen, the things that are revealed in the Tanya are truths. Truths are not exclusively kept for only one type of people. Right? Truth is truth. Anyone can achieve the truth. But the fact of the matter is nobody does achieve it. Here we have the Torah is in the world. God gave the Torah to the world. The non-Jews, no one is forcing them to not realize this truth. And nevertheless, none of them have gotten it. None of them. They have all reinterpreted the Torah, or they said the Jews lost the Torah, they said there's no such thing as the Torah, or they never heard of the Torah. And not the non-Jews, the Jews also. Right? The Torah is in a book, it's our religion, you have your religion.
It's the old.
The old way. All right, now we're going to learn. This is a mimer that the previous Rebbe, this is a continuation of the first mimer that I just finished explaining. This was said in the daytime of the holiday of Shavuot 1942 in the USA. How the Rebbe really said all these Maimorim, the previous Rebbe, is not so easy to understand because he was paralyzed. At least partially, but more than 50% paralyzed. And it was very difficult for him to speak to the point where at one point, I don't know if this was the point, but they say that only the Rebbe could really understand what he was saying. And he was... Okay, let's do the mimer. This is based on Pirkei Avot, advice which is given Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is called the ethics or the chapters of the fathers. And these are sayings that were passed down to us by the great leaders of Judaism from the Second Temple down. From the time of the Second Temple. And these sayings are not just good advice, and it's not just self-help books, but these are also part of the Torah. And the idea is supposed to be to give us a proper look at the world that we're in, because the purpose of the Jews, again, is to fix up the world, and you can't do it unless you fix yourself up. And you can't do that unless you know what the Torah is, to know what it means to be fixed. According to what standards is fixed considered to be. So, Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Dear, precious is man that was created in the form of God. That's what it says in Pirkei Avot. This is sort of long, so get ready. Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Dear is man. God loves man because he was created in God's image. We'll see in a moment that this is talking about the non-Jews. Chivi Yesera Nodaslo, an extra dearness was made known to man, Shenivra B'Tselem, because he was created in God's image. So what does it say? Dear is man because he was created in God's image. An extra dearness was made to man because he was created in God's image. It's not so understood what's going on over here. Shene'amar, because it says, Ki b'tselem Elokim asa et adam. Because in the form of God, man was made. Who is this said to? Who is this said? This was said to about the generation of Noach. The Noach. So that a person cannot kill another person because man was made in the image of God. Yes. Let's go further. Chavivim Yisrael. Dear are the Jewish people. Shenikru Banim Lamakom, that they are called sons of God. So all the non-Jews, they were created in the image of God. And they are dear to God, and they are not just dear, they're extra dear to God. And the Jewish people, they are dear to God, Chir Chavivim, because they are called the sons of God. Chiva Yesira Nodaslem, and the Jews also have an extra type of dearness. Shenikru Banim Lamakom, that they are called the sons of God. So they're dear to God and they're extra dear to God for the same reason. Shene'amar, don't eat please now. Eat after the class, thank you. Shene'amar, like it says, Shene'amar Banim Atem L'Hashem Elokeichem, you are sons to God, your God. Good? So what do we say here? Who is dear to God and extra to God? Everybody, all humanity. And then after that it says, and who is dear to God and extra dear to God? The Jews. So the non-Jews are dear to God because they were created in God's image. And the Jews are dear to God because they're called the sons of God. Huh? Does that make sense to you, Zachariah? Makes sense? What does it mean we're sons of God? What does it mean? You're a son of God.
All Jews are God's children. The Jews are the chosen people. God loves the Jews like his only sons.
Very nice. What about the non-Jews?
God created them. He loves them, but not as much as the Jews.
Okay, very good. They're very dear to him. Yes, that's right. But it's like a person who has a good friend or a next door neighbor that he really, really likes and is very dear to him. And he has his own son. His son is a little bit dearer to him. That's what it says in the Bible. We didn't make this up, right? If it was up to me, everybody would just be equal, and that's it. Like somebody asks the Rebbe, isn't Judaism very sort of chauvinistic? And the Rebbe said, listen, you're right, but I didn't create the world. Right? That's what God created the world. But let it just as a parenthetical statement, in parentheses, according to Judaism, the non-Jews are much more important and dear and irreplaceable than according to their religions. According to their religions, anyone who doesn't believe in whatever the religions are is just not, is nothing. Maybe potentially they can believe. But if you don't do what they say, then you're not really worth anything. According to Judaism, God personally creates every single non-Jew constantly. Creates every single non-Jew constantly, every moment. And he creates them from love. So it comes out that according to Judaism, every single human being is chaviv, is precious to God. And not only is he precious, he's extra precious. We'll see what it means, precious and extra precious. So, but it's just not the same thing as the Jews. The Jews, they're called sons of God. Huh? Usually Bechori, in this case, even though it's spelled like firstborn, but in this case it means special, chosen. So B'nai Bechori Yisrael, it should be like with a chet. But that's what Rashi says over there. B'nai Bechori Yisrael, when God tells Moshe to go into Paro and say, B'nai Bechori Yisrael, my son, my firstborn Israel, he said that Rashi says it means my chosen. My chosen. Why it's written with a chaf instead of a chet?
Not that first place saying?
Could be. It's written in a lot of places. But the Jews, they're precious to God, a different type of preciousness. Okay, let's understand what this means. Let's understand what this means. Hey, we're not finished with the Pirkei Avot. The Pirkei Avot says like this: man is dear to God because he is created in God's image. Man is extra dear to God because he's created in God's image. As it says, in the image of God, man was created. Then it says, the Jews are dear to God because they're sons of God. The Jews are extra dear to God because they're the sons of God. Like it says, you are the sons of God. Okay, now that's the first two parts. First part talks about the non-Jews, that they're dear and they're extra dear. Second part talks about the Jews, they're dear and they're extra dear, extra precious. And the third one, let's see. Chavivim Yisrael, the Jewish people are dear. Shenitan laem kli chemda, that there was given to them a precious vessel. Chiva yetera nodat lahem, an extra dearness was made known to them. Shenitan laem kli chemda, that there was given to them a precious vessel. 1 second. I'll tell them. Shene'amar, as it says, Ki lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al ta'azovu. As it says, a good teaching. Lekach means teaching. Lekach tov. Hello? אתה שומע? Hello? אתה שומע? אל תשב חוץ מהדלת. תשב קצת, זה מפריע. God gave them a precious vessel. What is this precious vessel? This precious vessel is the Torah. Shene'amar, like it says, Lekach tov natati lechem, a precious vessel I have given to you, Torati, my Torah. Al ta'azovu, do not abandon it. Do you think you can follow? Okay, so what do we see? This Mishnah in Pirkei Avot is divided into three sections. The first section talks about the non-Jews. Second section talks about the Jews. The third section talks about the Torah. Let's see. Hine, Mazkir Khan Gimel Inyanim. There's mentioned here three topics. Adam, man, all of mankind. Yisrael, the Jews. The Torah and the Torah. She'em Gimel Ofani Chiva. That these are three ways of dearness. Chivas Adam, the dearness of man. Chivas Yisrael, the dearness of the Jews. Chivat Torah, and the dearness of the Torah. Ubakol achat me'em, and in each and every one of them, yesh, there are shnei ofani chiva, two types of dearness. Chiva, a dearness, a preciousness. The chiva yetera, and an extra preciousness. Okay, what is going on over here? What is happening? Right? This is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, so it must be something very exact and very true. Said that the non-Jews are very precious to God and they're extra precious to God. They're precious and they're very precious. The Jews are precious and they're very precious. The Torah is precious and very precious. What does it mean? Ubechalolot in general, Hagimel chivot, these three types of dearness, Hine, behold, achiva yoter gedola, the dearness, the greatest dearness, is chivasan shel Yisrael, the dearness of the Jewish people. Shahari, because behold, Gama Torah, also the Torah. Hachaviva lo, which is precious to God, Yitborech, blessed be He. Shehi, which is Chachmato ubina uratzono, this is God's wisdom and will. Nitna l'Yisrael davka, was given to the Jewish people specifically. Beli shum hevdel klal gadol b'katan, without any difference between big and small. Lochen, therefore, hine, kol Yisrael, all of the Jewish people, mechuyavim, are obligated b'talmud Torah, to learn the Torah. Kamosh Katuv, as it says, Rabbeinu, as the Alter Rebbe says, the first Rebbe of Chabad writes in his book, which is called Hilchot Talmud Torah, in the laws of learning Torah. Every Jew has to learn Torah. And if you remember, we learned yesterday in the Sikha of the Rebbe, even a child, when he's 3 years old, as soon as he begins to understand, right, he has an obligation to learn Torah. Right? If he can get it together, then he has to find some way to learn Torah himself. A 6-year-old child, he's abandoned, he has to find someone to teach him. Ubir inyan, who? Tihine, behold. All right, ready? The Rebbe is going to tell us now about different levels of the soul that are possessed by the Jews and by the non-Jews, and different levels of the Torah. And all of them are dear to God. All of them are precious to God. And this is relevant to the holiday of Shavuot, because at the holiday of Shavuot, God gave the Torah to show how important everyone in the world is to Him. Because inside of the Torah is also contained what's called the 7 Noahide commandments, the 7 commandments for all mankind. Which these 7 commandments, by the way, are only, that's not all the commandments. It's not all, that's only the negative ones. All the 7 Noahide commandments are only things non-Jews are forbidden to do. But there's a lot of things which they are supposed to yes to. Some people say that there's 30 in the Gemara in Chulin. Talks about that there's 30 commandments for the non-Jews. Now, these aren't really commandments the same sense as the commandments for the Jews, but nevertheless they are commandments. So that all occurred when God gave the Torah. Right? If God didn't care, He'd say, do what you want. What do I care? But God does care. So let's see. Biranya. Let's explain this. Who? Tehine, behold, Chavivim Yisrael, that which the Jewish people are dear to Him. Kai refers on the Nefesh Elokit. This refers to the godly soul. Do you remember, Zachariah, we've talked about the godly soul before? Remember that? Yeah. The Jewish people have 2 souls, 2 identities. One of them is themselves, normal like everybody else, a little bit different. And the other one is an awareness of the Creator. Every single Jew feels that he's being created, and he's being created for a purpose. Every Jew feels this, but it's hidden deep down. That's called the godly soul. And the godly soul is deep down inside. It has to be awakened by education. It has to be awakened by experience. Sometimes it's awakened by God Himself. Sometimes God Himself wakes up the Jews. Personally, that was one of the things of the 6-Day War in Israel. When Israel had the 6-Day War, there were Jews. I tell the story over and over. I had an uncle, Uncle Irv. I really didn't know him very well, and he was a very not happy person. Not happy person. He was always. He seemed to be a very nice person, but very nice person. Let's learn the mimer, and we'll talk about that. And he was totally not anything to do with religion, with Judaism, nothing whatsoever. I don't even think he had that much, how do you say, interest in life at all. You know, he was sort of a depressed sort of a person. But religion for sure not. You know, that was pretty much my whole father's side of the family. They were all, I mean, actually my mother's side of the family also. They were nothing whatsoever to do with Judaism or religion. But even his parents, my father's mother and father, they were already not already not religious. I remember. My bar mitzvah, I remember my father's father cut the bread, and he said, Asher kirishano b'mitzvos v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner Chanukah, because that's the only blessing. If I remember correctly, I was 13 years old at the time. Right. But my uncle, when there was the 6-Day War, my uncle emptied his whole bank account. Emptied the whole thing out. I think he had $50,000, whatever, $100,000, whatever he had. Emptied the whole thing out. Gave the whole thing to Israel. Everything. He could care less whatsoever if somebody would have come in the middle of the year and asked for money for the Jews of Israel. He wouldn't have given them a penny. Suddenly something happened in the 6-Day War. And after the 6-Day War, the Jews won the 6-Day War, as suddenly Jews started flocking, non-religious Jews flocked to the Kotel. And there were so many non-religious Jews flocking to the Kotel that the Gera Rebbe, the Rebbe of the Gera Chassidim, that usually the Gera Chassidim are sort of insulated. They're wonderful people, but they were sort of insulated people. All the other groups of Chassidim, he sent his Chassidim down to the wall to help Chabad put tefillin on people. There were so many people putting on tefillin for the first time, a lot of them for the first time in their lives. And people were crying and they were weeping and they were this. The 6-Day War just woke people's souls up, woke up their godly souls. I heard there's a exhibition, I think it's in Kfar Chabad in Israel, about the 6-Day War. And they have over there a recording of Mate Gur. Mate Gur was one of the generals of the army. Maybe he was the chief general, I don't remember, but he was one of the big generals. And he was the one that took Jerusalem. And it's famous, he said, Jerusalem is in our hands. And then after that, he said, in Hebrew, it's much better. They did it translated, it's not as good because you can hear his voice. He said, the next broadcast they had, he said, I'm not a religious man, and I have never been a religious man. You have to listen to exactly what the language is. I'm not a religious, I've never been a religious man. I have nothing to do with religion or Judaism. He said, but I'm touching the walls, touching the stones of the Western Wall, and I'm overcome with emotion, he said. Ani nogea be'avnei hakotel v'ani mitragesh. Huh? Just hearing him say it, I broke out crying. And then suddenly something woke up. What is it? A bunch of stones? What is it? What do you want to say? Because it's historical import. What about there's walls in Caesarea, right? Whether the Romans built. Could be even older than the Kotel. Who knows when right? There's walls in Caesarea that were built by the Romans. What is it? Over 2,000 years ago. Nobody cries over there. He just feels something is the wall. Okay, let's go. That's called the Jewish soul. The Jewish soul is very dear to God. Jewish soul. The neshamot hen anikra banim lamakom. Because these souls are what are called sons of God. Ukamoshe katuv Rabbeinu, and as the Alter Rebbe writes, Perek Beit, in the 2nd chapter of the book called the Tanya. What does it say over there? Neshamot Yisrael, the souls of the Jewish people, Alu b'machshava, rose up in God's thought. The whole entire world was created. The entire universe with all the angels were created by God's speech, and the Jewish people, they come from God's thought. Dechativ, like it is written, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, my son, my chosen one, Israel. Banim atem Lashem Elokeichem. You are sons to God, your God. Perush, what does it mean? Kamo ben, just like the son, Nimshach is drawn, Mimoach ha'av, from the brain of the father. This is all written in the 2nd chapter of the Tanya. Kach kiviyachol, what does it mean the son is drawn from the brain of the father? It explains over there. Now is not the time to explain it, but that's what it says. Kach kiviyachol, so to speak, Neshamos kol Yish Yisrael, the soul of every Jew, Nimshacha was drawn, Mimachshavto v'chachmato yitbarech, from God's thought and God's wisdom. End quote. That's what it says in the Tanya. The Jewish people are called sons of God because they originate in the essence of God. Just like a son originates from the essence of his father. Whether his father realizes it or not, that's the fact. Bezeu. That's what it means. Yisrael alo b'machshava. The Jewish people rose up in God's thought. Shezeu b'chinet chachma. This is the level of chachma. Chachma is the highest of the 10 sfirot. This is the chachma of God. Machshava hi lavush ala chachma. That thought is the garment for this level of chachma. Now, what is chachma in human personality? What's chachma? Chachma is faith. Faith is an example of chachma. Conscience is also a feeling of chachma. What does it mean? It's a thing that's above understanding. Doesn't make any sense. Right? It makes no sense. This is found in Jews and also in non-Jews. Non-Jews also have what's called 10 sfirot. But the Jews have it regarding God. God. Faith in God means that a Jew really believes that God is creating him every moment. Not only he believes it, he feels it. And it's totally incomprehensible. Totally incomprehensible. No mind can possibly grasp it. And there's no logical reason to suppose that it's true. And why does God have to create us every moment? There's big geniuses, religious rabbis, right? And they really believe, even after reading the Zohar and reading all the Kabbalistic ideas, that God created the world whenever he created it. He created it, and now he let it coast. And we're separate from God. We're separate from God somehow or other, and God looks at us and because that's logic. But Chachma, true Jewish faith, is that there's nothing except for God. All there is God. God is creating everything all the time. That's Chachma. It's totally incomprehensible. It defies logic. It's illogical. There's no reason to say it, but it's true. And a Jew feels it. That's called Chachma. That's the source of every Jewish soul. The Zohar, in the Zohar, Nikra Chachma, Chachma is called the name of Machshava. It's called Machshava, God's thought. Kamaimer, Machshava v'yuvla lo itparish la'almin. Like the saying of the Zohar, that Machshava thought and the Jubilee will never be separated forever. Because the Zohar is a little bit mystical. So the Jubilee is the 50th year. 50 stands for what's called the 50 gates of understanding. That's what it says in the book, the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation. It says over there that Bina corresponds to the number of 50. There's 50 gates of Bina. And that's what's opened up in the Jubilee year, in the 50th year. So Jubilee, Yovel, is the Bina. Bina, understanding, ultimate understanding. And Machshava is Chachma. So here we see an example that when it says the Jews rose up in God's Machshava, his thought, means that he rose up in God's Chachma, the highest aspect of godliness. That's the essence of godliness. That's where the Jewish souls came from this last aspect of Chachma. The Kavana is Chachma and Bina. Machshava and Yovel is Chachma and Bina. Hein, Train, Reim, they are called two partners, the lo mitparshim, that are never separated. These are Kabbalistic ideas, but it says Chachma and Bina always are linked together. And there's Maimorim that explain why they're always linked together. Because Chachma is like the innermost point, and Bina is the expansion of that point. It's like it's like in order to keep the world in existence, there has to be God's original thought and God's plan have to be linked all the time to the creation. The plan of creation, that's Bina. And God's original thought, his impetus to create the world, that's Chachma. That's really the outside of Chachma. Okay, yes.
Sometimes known as like inspiration.
In a human being, yes. In a human being, yes. And the inside of God's Chachma, that's where the Jewish people came from. The kamo b'kochot hanefesh, just like in a person's personality. Hari Chachma is haskala. Chachma means, like you said, the original flash of an idea. Oh, I get it. And Bina, this is understanding. V'hasaga mashlima zu b'zu. And havana and hasaga, understanding, and how do you say, conceiving of an idea and understanding it, this completes one the other. V'efshar zu b'lizu. It's impossible one without the other. Okay, now the Rebbe is explaining. What's he explaining? That the Jewish souls come from God's thought. God's thought is another way of saying God's chachma. God's chachma is the top of the 10 sfirot. We're talking about spiritual ideas that manifest themselves in the physical world. Because to God, the most important thing is this physical world. So all of the upper worlds are in the pattern of this physical world. Or you can look at the other way, that this physical world is in the pattern of the upper worlds. That's the famous saying that by the Shlah HaKodesh, if everything in the upper worlds is hinted at down here, or if everything down here is hinted at in the upper worlds. Because what's really the main thing? So here we're saying the whole world is created from God's understanding. And the Jewish people, they come from God's wisdom. God's chachma is higher. The kasher haskal, but they have to be united together. They have to be united together. It's the same thing with God putting the Torah in the world. Why did he have to put the Torah in the world? Why didn't he leave it up in heaven? Remember, that's the last mimer that we learned. So the answer is no. Only by being in the world is the Torah really the Torah. Can the Torah really do its job and be connected, arouse the essence of God? Only by being in the physical world. He says that's the idea of the Jews. The Jews are connected to the essence of God. But they have to be in the world. They have to be, so Chachma, which is the essence of God, and Bina, which is how the world is created, that they have to be united all the time. Kasher haskala einu bo b'hasaga. For instance, take it in our personality. If your ideas don't come to be understood, hainu she'i efshar lahavina eineno efshar lahabina eineno haskala. It's impossible that there can be understanding if there's no original idea. And there can't be any original ideas if there's no receptacle to receive them. Sure, like the example of the person who was the genius, academic genius mathematician, and nobody understands what he's talking about, right? So he just stops ideas. If he doesn't have any paper to write down on, he has a hope that someday somebody's going to read it. So, right? A genius, a musician, that he's deaf, but he can't hear anything. So, he's got the potential, but it doesn't come out. There has to be two things together. There has to be the potential, and there has to be the revelation of that potential, the receptacle. Chachma is the potential of godliness, and Bina is the receptacle for godliness. Or in simple language, an idea, an inspiration, and an understanding of the inspiration. Did you want to say something? So that's where the Jewish people come from. They train Reim Dalom Isparshin. They're called two friends, Chachma and Bina. In other words, what do they call it? Eureka, the original idea, the epiphany. What do they call it? There's something I read, the spark, right? Create a spark, and the actual creation, the idea how to put this into reality. That's called Chachma and Bina. They cannot be separated. V'zeu Machshava, which is Chachma, and Yuvla, which is Bina. Jubilee is Sfirat Habina. There cannot be separated. Where do the Jews come from? The Jews are dear to God because Alu b'machshava, they rose up in God's thought. The whole world comes from God's thought, but the Jews rose up in God's thought. The Neshamat Yisrael, hine shoresh shachatan, the source of their existence is from the level of Chachma. V'zeu, that's what it means. In Pirkei Avot, when it says Chaviv in Yisrael, dear are the Jews, this refers to the godly soul. Good. The godly soul, of course it's dear. It's the Son of God. It's close to God. Of course it should be dear to God. Creation, the whole creation is just the external of God. The Jews are the sons of God. Of course they're dear. So what does it say? If the Jews are dear to God, then why does this Mishnah start off and say all humanity is dear to God? What does it mean? Im kain ma she'omar Chaviv Adam. What does it mean? That man is dear. Shenivra b'tzelem. Lo ka'al nefesh elokit. It doesn't refer to the godly soul. Shari al nefesh elokit. And the godly soul, sheyeshna rak b'Yisrael, which is only by the Jews. Omar, it says afterwards, Chaviv Yisrael. If so, why does the Mishnah start off by all mankind is dear? If all mankind is dear, then why pick the Jewish people and say the Jewish people are dear? Of course they're dear. Everyone is dear. Ela omru chaviv adam shenivra. This is called, refers in the Jewish people, because every Jew is also an entire world. This refers to the Jewish people. Pirkei Avos are for the Jews, right? It refers to the nefesh hasichlit. This refers to a third soul, which is in the Jews, which is called the intellectual soul. Now, usually in the Tanya, for instance, it only talks about the godly soul and the animal soul. And it's explained other places that this intellectual soul is really the top part of the animal soul. The top part of the animal soul. The intellectual part of the animal soul. In a short way, we can say like this. The animal soul wants physical pleasure, immediate pleasure. What's the saying? I want it all and I want it now. That's the animal soul. The godly soul wants only God. That's all it wants. Only what Hashem wants. The problem is it's only one person. It contains all this. And the job of the Jewish people is supposed to be, first of all, in themselves, to convince their animal soul to also want godliness. How does it do that? The animal soul, it's like going to a dog and talking to a dog or talking to a horse, right? Talking to it. Listen, it's not good for you to eat all day long. Horse, listen a second. It's not good that they say if you put food in front of a horse, he'll eat until he dies. I don't know if that's true. Let's say it's true. You go in front of animals can do self-destructive things. Human beings can also do, right? Talk to someone who's an addict, a drug addict, a gambling addict. Talk to him. Say what you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is destroying yourself. It's like talking to a dog. Talking to a horse. It won't help it. They'll say, yes, oh yes, you're right. I'm sorry. He'll start to cry and leave me alone. Get out of here. So he can do what he wants. Right? It's like talking. You can't talk to the animal soul. The animal soul can't be explained to anything, especially about God. You want to explain about God. It doesn't make any sense. If you explain, listen, you believe in God, you're gonna win at the lottery, right? You really believe in God, then you're gonna get only pure heroin. It won't be mixed. Oh, then they might believe in God, right? But
I don't know about animals, but certainly in the animal soul in a man, it's been designed to be changed.
One minute. Not only is that's what the reason it's created, but the question is, how can you do it? The animal soul wants only one thing: immediate pleasure. How it gets it? That's Freud's whole thing. Animal soul wants immediate pleasure. If Freud was right about the Oedipus complex, could be he was right. Doesn't make any difference. That's all it wants. Then we have the godly soul. What does the godly soul want? Only the ultimate truth. It wants God. It wants Hashem. He realizes Hashem is the creator. He creates everything, creates the animal soul. And 1 minute, the godly soul has to try to explain to the animal soul. How does it do it? So there's a soul in the middle, which is called the intellectual soul.
This is the third soul.
That's right. And this intellectual soul, that's right. And what does the intellectual soul want? It wants the truth. The animal soul tells it, you want the truth? Take this drug, do this thing, go over here, do this, and you'll feel good. And it doesn't, and it feels good. That's the truth. That's true. Can't get any more true than that. Now, God, the intellectual soul says, you're right. You're right. 100% you're right. It says, now the animal soul says, now the only problem is, how do I get the money to do this? Start thinking. How do I get to the top? How can I be a hit? How can I be popular? How can I get power? How can I get control? Whatever it wants, whatever the animal soul wants, right? How do I get this thing without getting caught? How do I get this thing without, right? Here's his way. No, that's what you're for, intellectual soul. Figure it out for me, right? Figure it out for me. I want you to figure out is it right? Is it wrong? If it feels good, it's right. If it feels good, it's right. So the intellectual soul becomes the prisoner of the animal soul. Why? Because it's true. The animal soul is giving it truth. Do this thing, it feels good. Afterwards you do it, it doesn't feel good anymore. He gets trapped or whatever. Okay, that's another problem. That's another problem. But we have also the godly soul also talks to the intellectual soul. And the godly soul says, Tam u'ru'u ki tov Hashem. Taste and you'll feel that Hashem is good. And the intellectual says, what? That's Dodi Dofik. My beloved is knocking. Come in, Pitchili, open up. Think a little bit about God. Think a little bit about your Creator. Think a little bit about how good I am. And the animal soul says, that's a really good idea, but not now. Later. Later do it. Later, Yom Kippur, you go to shul. Think about it. Right? And afterwards, he does go to Yom Kippur, and he thinks the whole Yom Kippur, what's he thinking about? Or food, or he's thinking about business, or everything like that. He says, that's the three souls. So we haven't gotten to the animal soul yet. We haven't got to the animal soul. So far we know that what it says, dear is man that was created in the image, that's talking about the intellectual soul. Extra dearness. The dear is the Jews that they're called the sons of God. That's talking about the godly soul. If so, what does it mean an extra dearness was known to man and an extra dearness was known to the Jews? We'll talk about that with God willing tomorrow. Ooh.